Welcome everybody to another episode of Tell Me About It with Jakeel. We have a special guest today. We have Stephanie, who is not only my coworker, aka the person who brought me to Mount Sac, also known as Stephanie, my sister, also known as Stephanie, the person I went to grad school with, also Stephanie, the person who have a lot of experiences together and conversations about work and life and all sorts of things. But before I let Stephanie kind of talk about whatever she wants to talk about and our topic today, just highlighting some of the things about Stephanie and just my experiences with her in general. Um, I think the biggest thing with Stephanie and I is our working relationship is very smooth, and I don't think I've ever been in a professional environment where the the camaraderie and the relationship is so easy. And I think that's one of the things that I'll always cherish about our professional relationship is like, if I have an idea, if she has an idea, we just run with it and we get shit done that way. And everything that we do, I know it's the best interest of our students. And there's been some ups, there's been some downs, but there's never been any issues with me and Stephanie and trying to serve our students. Um, and so that's the one thing. And I tell her all the time, almost every time we meet and stuff like that, is like, I appreciate her. I appreciate that she even thought about me and bringing me on board after one housing conversation. And I appreciate the work that she continues to do. And she's like super dedicated to the students. Like I've never been in a job where somebody puts in 120% effort towards their students as much. And like it's crazy to see like the dedication and like the effort, the energy, the time, the countless like hours that you don't get paid just supporting the students and stuff like that. And so I just wanted to highlight that because that is something that I really want to do with this podcast. Y'all know that is highlighting the work that these professionals do. And Stephanie being someone who's super close to me and stuff like that, definitely telling her this. And I kid you not, this isn't the first time Stephanie has heard me say this. So I appreciate her and the work that she does. But Stephanie is our guest today, and we will be talking about our experiences as young professionals of color, particularly in higher ed, particularly in this field of student affairs. And just like all guests, I like to ask them this question, just so people know that this relationship is real. This isn't like some person I brought on just, for clout or for likes and stuff. So Stephanie, you can start by telling the people things that you want to tell them, whether that's about your identities or whatever. But ultimately, the question for you is talk about an experience that you have had with none other than me.
Absolutely. So first of all, I told you that you would probably have a better introduction for me than I could for myself. So thank you for that. First and foremost, like honestly, thank you for your words. Like it means a lot every time you say it. But to answer your question, I think that obviously we have a educational relationship. We were cohort mates. So I think that already speaks a lot to it because it was 3 long years of grad
Yeah.
school. So definitely, I think that's something. But I feel like where I definitely want to highlight is, like you mentioned, our work relationship. It is so smooth. We are so in sync. It's scary. I think that we agree on a lot of views and just our perspective. And I think our intentions with the students are always like, we want a program around what they need. And it's like we read each other's minds sometimes when we're thinking of ideas. But definitely, I think the work that we've been able to do in such a short period amount of time, and also in this like remote COVID world, is just amazing to me, really. And I feel like if I had to choose one thing, it would just have to do just speak upon the work that we do with our students currently and in our current positions, specifically what we did in the summer. I mean, we literally transitioned a 7-week summer program to a remote program within days. We literally took days to plan it, but it's just crazy how, you know, one random day I had just finished reading the Four Agreements, and I was just like, our students need to read this because you know, they go through so much trauma. And literally it was just like a quick text, and I was like, hey, I think we need to do this. And that little text just transformed into an entire curriculum of healing circles that we did for our students. And till this day, I just feel like I get chills just thinking about how we were able to facilitate healing circles for our students, and they were so positive and so healthy. And it literally was just a text, and it was just like, I have this crazy idea, and you like went with it, and we went with it, and we were like, we don't know if it's gonna work, but let's try. And I think that specific experience really speaks upon, I think, our work relationship, in the sense that we really support each other in that way, where you have an idea and I never question it. I'm like, let's do it, you know, and let's plan it out and let's do it. And likewise with me, anytime that I have an idea, or I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? You never come from a place where you want to like critique me. And again, I think that really highlights for today's topic, because as young professionals, we deal with a lot of that, where and I'll talk about it more, but you know, we're always constantly having to prove our ideas and our points. And that's never been the case in our work relationship. And that's so rare. I think so rare. So I really treasure that. But I think you make work so fun. I think we have a lot of fun. As hard as we work, we have a lot of fun as well with our students. We bring the energy, we joke around with them, you know, so I can just say that it's such a smooth work relationship, but you make it fun too. So I think that just the current programming that we have done and continue to do, like today, I mean, we just got off of an event today, you know, it's always really fun. So yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, you know, I think I want to emphasize that, like, when we say smooth, I mean, like, it is literally smooth. Like, there's been, and we're like, for some reason, like, just we think about similar things. And I think a lot of it has to do with our backgrounds and how we view like education and higher ed and what we're supposed to do as professionals and serving our students. Like, I know there was that one time, and I normally don't talk about like my experiences, but whatever. But I know there's that one time where like I wasn't working and I texted you, hey, do you need me to come in and like come to study hall? And you were like, I was literally texting you that I needed support in study hall. And I was just like, wow, like, I don't know how that works. It just works that way. But like the relationship is super smooth and like we get so much done. And to really emphasize the summer, and I want to emphasize like and highlight the work that we do, because like I said before, like we as, you know, young professionals, one, we don't get the recognition that we deserve for the things that we do. Two, being, you know, professionals of color, we don't get necessarily the acknowledgement as well as the respect that we deserve for the work that we do. And what we were able to do in the summer, like we were able to do some like really like revolutionary shit. Like we were able to do healing circles revolving around the Four Agreements, and how that literally impacted our students, and like having those conversations, that dialogue. We also were doing the like enrichment Fridays, where I was like leading all these different conversations that tied right into the book. And every like the amount of feedback that we got from our students about like their transformation and like the things they want to prioritize and their self-worth and their identities. And I think that was like the highlight of the summer for me too, is just being like, damn, our students are growing, and they are growing because we are facilitating that space for them. So yeah, I really admire that. But to get into our topic, you know, because I could talk about, you know, the work that we do all the time, and you know, because you know that's what we do. We reflect on it. But we are going to be talking about the experiences that we've had as young professionals of color in higher ed. And one thing to note too, we are both products of community college. We are also happen to both work at the community colleges that we once attended as professionals. And so we'll get into that a little bit. But before we get into that, my question to you is, if you can go back and talk to first year staff member Steph and give that Steph one piece of advice about navigating like higher ed as a professional, what would it be? One thing you could, at least if it was a warning, advice, whatever.
Ooh, we're starting with the advice.
You have to start there because it brought.
Let's start with the positive. No, I feel like we've had conversations around this before, and I'm still, reflecting upon it now because it's where I am now and where I'm currently still working on. I do still consider myself fairly young, but I know I'm not as young as I was when I first started. But if I had to go back and really tell myself kind of where I'm at now, is just really just remind myself that, my ideas are so worthy and that I really need to stop doubting myself, because that's the thing, is that you let people get into your head and you're young, you don't know any better. So you like believe it. And when people pick at you in staff meetings or people question your ability and stuff, you can't help but be like, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not good enough for that position. Maybe I shouldn't be here.
Mm.
And I really, I feel like at times I really sold myself short. I didn't go for those committees. I didn't put myself out there. I kid you not. There is so many meetings where I left feeling so upset that I didn't speak up.
Mm.
And that's one of the worst feelings that you can have, when you leave a space and in your gut, you didn't say what you knew you wanted to say. And you didn't say it because you felt like people didn't, they didn't want to hear you.
Yeah.
You felt like your voice was not worthy. And there was so many times, so many that happened to me. And now I reflect on it and I'm like, my ideas are good. And I feel like, especially now, we're seeing our growth in our students, we're seeing all this good work that we're doing because we're just doing. And I just feel like, and especially for all those young professionals that are starting off or, are in undergrad and are going to be applying for these positions soon, like, you really got to remind yourself that your voice and ideas are so powerful, and you really got to trust your gut and your passion, because my passion has always been there since day one. If anything, it's only getting stronger, but it's always been there. My ideas have always been there, and I just feel like I really let it get to my head, and I just didn't believe because I let other people get into my head. And I would really just go back and tell myself, like, speak up. Don't be afraid. Let them know that you're there. Don't hide in the back. Because there was times where I wanted to pretend like I wasn't there, right? It's easier to pretend so people don't point at you. So I feel like I would have just, own up, speak up. Don't sell yourself short just because you're young. You have a lot to say. You're very powerful, and your age is not a weakness. It's a strength. And I think that for a long time, I kind of saw it as a weakness. And I think the most dreaded question in a staff meeting is, what's your age? And you just like cringe when they ask you that, or you like steer away from it, and you're like, old enough, or you'll throw back a joke or something. I would hate when people would ask you, like, so how old are you? Or how long did you graduate? How long ago was it since you graduated and stuff? And I would really like steer away from that question, because I really felt like, oh shoot, my age is a weakness. And now I'm like, oh hell no, my age is something that makes me that much stronger, that much more connected to my students. And it's amazing that as young professionals, we're doing the work that we're doing, and we're just getting started. I'm just getting started. We're just getting started. Yeah. So I think, to leave it at that, I would just probably say, my age is not a weakness.
Yeah. I think that just that in itself is super powerful. Like the aspect of like, speaking up, like, and understanding that your ideas are worthy. I think, for young professionals, at some point you will have that kind of idea at some point, right? Even with me, I kind of went to a similar process of like, oh, my ideas aren't worthy. I'll just go to the staff meeting, won't say anything, even if I have opinions on how we should do certain things and stuff, because, I felt that my age was a weakness as well. And there's nothing like being in a staff meeting and somebody saying, either somebody asking you directly how old you are, or someone saying like, oh, you probably wasn't old enough to understand that reference. And you're just like, maybe I'm not, maybe I am. Like, it's just awkward for you to just say that though, because now people are looking at me like, oh, you are like a baby. And you're just like, this is awkward. But for me, I would say the thing that I would tell myself would be to understand that everybody you work with won't always have the best interests of the students. And as sad as that to say, especially for incoming professionals, particularly in student affairs, that's what we think. We think everybody who's in the jobs that we've been fighting for, or jobs or supervisors and above, that they all want what's best for our students. And you know, shortly you realize that, like, you know, some people really just want the accolades, some people just want the recognition, some people just want to be able to say they did certain things and not really care about what our students are experiencing. And me, I was a super naive young professional, and I came in working in student life. And so I was just like, of course we care about our students. Of course we care that our students are going to be involved on campus. And they really didn't. It was more so like, oh, we need to make sure we have these numbers and this and that. And I'm just like, but what about our students? And so that was one of the hardest things. And one of the things that I probably would tell myself, like, hey, like, you got to go in there and not think that everybody will have the best interests of the students. You hope so, like, but understand that, like, don't be surprised if a dean is like, I don't really interact with the students. I don't really have the best interests of the students. I have what's the best interest of the institution. And sometimes those things do not go hand in hand. Like, when it comes down to it, some professionals will choose the institution over the students, even though the institution is supposed to serve the students. And so that was one of the things I feel like I myself would have loved to have said to myself. So let's get into the juice, you know, let's get into the good stuff, right? Let's talk barriers. Let's talk issues or things that we've experienced that have really just impacted our journeys, right? And I'll go first to kind of give you an idea of what I mean, because I don't really know how to phrase the question. So for example, for me, early on in my professional life, I learned that staff staff members will look at you as if you are still like an undergrad. Or one thing that I experienced very heavily was like, there's no way that you're a staff member here. You must be a student worker. And that impacted me so much because I kept trying to prove to these people that I was a staff member instead of just ignoring it and doing my job. And so I dealt with a lot of like, oh, like they're gonna look at me as a student staff member. People are gonna not ask me my opinion. I'm not gonna be able to do this. I'm not gonna be able to do that. And, and a lot of it brings me back to like modern, you know, references of like people saying like, well, let me talk to the manager. And you're like, well, I am the manager, you know, like a lot of that. It's like, well, like, can you go get a staff member? And I'm like, okay, well, how can I help you? You know, so that was one thing that changed the trajectory of like my professional life, because I started to behave in this quote unquote idea of professionalism, which is a good and a bad thing. I started to be like, well, let me wear button downs and slacks and tuck my shirt in and wear my name tag. And so people know that I'm a staff member and not a student. So that was one thing. That's an example that I can give on that situation or that kind of question.
Yeah, definitely. I think that we have a very similar experience in that sense. And, you know, in our particular situations, we both worked at the institution that we went to school. So that definitely, I think, at first, I was like, that's such a great thing. It's such a positive thing. I honestly, I feel like that's a barrier that I personally didn't see coming. I didn't. I feel like it's one that, I don't know, maybe I was so naive, but it was one that really hit me. Like, it was a slap in the face because I didn't expect it. But yeah, I think a lot of us, especially product of community college, which again, huge advocate, the community college system. I love it. And I'm a proud product, right, of the community college. So oftentimes our experience is so positive that we obviously want to go back and give back, So in both of our situations, we went back to work at the institution that really saw us develop. And I think for both our situations, we were very involved community college students. We were in everything, from our conversations, we were, active leaders and leadership roles, student workers. I mean, we worked to get our name known. And we didn't know any better. I mean, we were literally just programming. We were literally just being involved, working because we needed the money, but also because we cared. So, we worked really hard to get our names at this institution. Eventually you end up knowing people and people know you and all that stuff. So then, you come back and, people in and to me, I was like, it's great. I know everybody. I'm going to feel comfortable. I know the system very well. And I know that, people know me and it's going to be good. But you're absolutely right. It is a challenge because people struggle to see you as a professional because they're so used to seeing you as a student worker.
Yep.
And it's really having to be like, no, I'm not the student worker anymore. I'm a professional. I'm a full-time staff member, just like you, and it's hard. And I feel like eventually it does get better. So it does get better. But in the beginning, you do have to work to kind of prove yourself. And it's like people are so used to seeing you a certain way. And you have to remind them that's not who I am anymore. And it does kind of make you feel like you have to work twice as hard to prove yourself that you're not that student worker anymore, that you have all these abilities and you can do so much more. So definitely face that a lot. But I do want to highlight that again. I don't know if I was just naive, but I didn't expect that one. I did not, until people were like, just the way they would talk to me and stuff, I'd be like, whoa, like that was old me, I got a degree now, I have a bachelor's degree now, like I'm different, and I don't think people got that, or people I feel like assumed that I was gonna make same mistake, or they kind of treat you a little bit different. I remember sometimes too, they would be like, oh, I felt like they weren't giving me like full, like they were kind of limiting me in a way, I guess, if that makes sense. So definitely that was a big one for me, that didn't see it coming. I feel like another one that I can probably highlight, and I think you touched upon it as well, and particularly because of the field of work that I do, a lot of my experience has been with high school students. I do a lot of high school work, whether it's outreach, retention, or current, equity work. It's usually out in the community and out in the high school. So I've gotten a lot of, where's your student ID? I've gotten a lot of those, because even people out there, don't think that we're professionals. I've gotten mistaken as a high school student and stuff. And some of them have been very aggressive. Like they've been, I remember this one time I was like proctoring, and it's like, like they're like really aggressive. Like, where's your ID and stuff like, you're like, I work here, I'm here proctoring. I'm not here to take the test. So definitely, I think that just having that younger complexion and just the way you dress, right, too, I think speaks a lot on it. So for me, not only have I faced it obviously at the actual campus, but out in the community, in the high schools, we look like a high school student. So definitely, I've had people mistake me for that as well. And then another one, I'm not sure if you want to definitely talk a lot more a bit, because I do feel it has a lot to do with it, is the way you dress, is the way you act, the way you carry yourself is huge. So for me, I think one experience that I will share was that, when I was in undergrad, I was also very, very involved, and I had, positions and stuff like that. And even though I know I wasn't a professional, I know I was technically a student worker, but, I was kicking butt, and I was programming, and I led programs, and I had jobs and stuff. But I noticed that people wouldn't take me seriously until I was dressed a certain way. And that was rough. And I was like frustrated and angry, and I, like you mentioned there, you kind of have to play the game. And there was a moment in my life where I did dress the part, and I was this legit 20-year-old undergrad that would sit in her lectures with a full-on, fancy blazer, like in freaking 90 degrees where everyone's wearing little short shorts and stuff. I'm in a blazer, heels, and I'm literally after class running across campus in my heels. And for those that know me know this is true, literally running across campus in heels to go to my student worker job. But I wanted to dress professional that people could take me serious.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of that too, where it's like you're so young and it's like you feel this pressure to look a certain way so that people actually listen to you, and you have to dress professionally. And then you also get that, well, don't wear that, don't wear this, don't wear that. So I do feel like it is another challenge too, is you kind of have to I feel like it's a challenge for everybody, but more so when you're young, it's definitely an added pressure, is the way you carry yourself, I would say.
Oh yeah. I think, to talk about some of those experiences that you touched on, like a lot of them. The first being like being a staff member at the community college that you were once a student at. And for me, like, I was not just like super involved as a student activist, like I was a vocal student activist. And so I like said shit to staff members, to deans, to administration that was like borderline like y'all need to do some shit. Y'all need to change the way that y'all approach students. Like y'all need to care more about Black students. Y'all need to care more about brown students. And because I was so focused in like Black advocacy work, that's like, I got a lot of attention. Like people saying like, oh, he's an honors student, but he's the BSU president and he's saying so many different things. And he's also like cussing and saying the N-word and all these different things. And there's like, but he's a student and his student voice is powerful. The moment I became a staff member, though, all of it changed. It was like the same people who I had cussed at, yelled at, spoke to were now my supervisors and coworkers, and they still saw me as the student activist Jakeel. And I had so many barriers trying to move up, trying to get recognition and stuff like that. And I remember particularly one instance where like one of the deans walked up to me and asked me like what college I was going to transfer to. And I was like, I'm a staff member on your staff, like on your literal staff, and you still think I'm a community college student who's supposed to transfer, right? And then we tie into like dress, right? Because before I started dressing like quote unquote professionally, I was still wearing jeans, t-shirt, and a hat. As you can see on the walls, I wear hats, like, and like I wear a hat every day. And so like when I became a professional, it was like, oh, please, like they started to emphasize like, you're not dressing the part, you're not dressing the part, you're not dressing the part. And then I was like, all right, whatever. And it got to the point where I was like, if I want to get work done, if I want to get stuff done, I got to dress the part. And I don't necessarily believe that now, but I would wear the dress shirt, the slacks, the tucked in shirt, the professional brown or black belt, the brown or black dress shoes, right? I'd wear my name tag, I'd comb my hair, not wear a hat and talk to people and stuff like that, cover my tattoos and stuff. And I started to notice how many people treated me differently. And that's when I was like, yo, this is some unfair treatment. Like, one, because I'm a young staff member. Two, just as a staff member, I shouldn't be forced to be wearing certain clothes in order to get recognition. Like, my work should speak for itself. And then another barrier that you mentioned is this aspect of like proving yourself. Like, I had to like prove that I knew how to do certain things. And I'm like, why do I have to prove it when you hired someone else who's below me in terms of job status and job title and pay grade, and you're not questioning any of their work? You're just questioning my work and my capabilities and stuff like that. And for me, right, I wouldn't say that, well, I was well known at Maricosta, and I'm going to say Maricosta because, they clearly that's what it was. Like I was super well known and people kept calling me Maricosta famous because they were like, everybody knows you in every department. Like you were that visible, right? And while I was never on any like catalog or anything like that, like brochures and stuff like that, my face started to go on some of them. And I was like, I don't want my face on brochures, but I don't really have a choice when it's public pictures that they're taking at events. So I was just like, what comes with the Maricosta fame comes all the downsides to it. And I think I started to learn, and this will segue into my next question. I started to learn that my student voice way more influential than my professional voice. Like the same things that I would say as a student, I could not say as a professional. Like, and I almost got fired multiple times because I would advocate for students. And I'd be like, whoa, like I literally have to watch how I say, like, we aren't doing a good job in catering to our student populations, because they start to take that as offense that I'm criticizing the work that they're doing. I'm like, no, like we just aren't doing a good job. We could be better in providing resources and stuff. So I think my next question is literally along those lines. Like, did you feel that there is a difference in like how people like viewed your student voice versus like how people view your professional voice, like your opinions or your advocacy for the students?
Definitely. Oh, definitely. I think that that's just such a huge, huge factor. I think that, like I mentioned, my experience, when I was an undergrad, I feel like I carried myself very professionally because I had to, because I wanted to make change. And I noticed that even though I was a student, again, I was trying to make very professional changes. So I needed to dress the part. I needed to do that. So I carried myself very professionally, but that was my like student worker. I was also a student.
Mm.
So when I was a student, I was not afraid to use my voice. We were advocating, and you were just out there and really organizing, and you could do that. But I definitely, the power that you have as a student versus the power you have as a staff member is so different. And I think that transition can be really hard for a lot of new professionals, because you may be aware of it, you may be not, but it's really rough because as a student, you're so passionate and you want to change the world and you're doing it and everything. And as a student, there's no consequences. You can literally roll up to a dean or whatever, speak your mind, and there is no consequences because you're a student and they need to listen. So we would do that, especially for us. We would be advocating for undocumented students, and we would constantly be fighting and pushing and stuff. And we did that. We knew we could push that because we were students. And then you become a staff member, and then you're in these staff meetings, and again, you want to push, and then you get hit real quick. Like real quick, it hits you that you can't do that anymore. You can't. That you don't have the level of protection anymore. On top of that, there's evaluations. You get evaluated. You have like just so much layers and stuff as well that, especially depending on the area you work, you have to, there's just so much to it that you don't have that freedom anymore that you have as a student. And that's a really kind of hard transitional period to go through, and even I feel like with students, I think that students kind of get upset at you because you're not fighting and pushing like you used to. And even it's kind of that like, oh, I've heard people be like, well, you're selling out and stuff like that, and you're not pushing, you're not doing. And again, it's just really hard as a professional. There's just more pressure and expectations, that you don't have the same power as you have as a student. And it's rough. It was really rough for me to be like, crap, I have to actually be careful and I have to do this. And again, some people, have your back and others don't, but some people are like, you shouldn't do that, you got to be careful. And that's really hard because as a student, you're so used to just pushing and advocating and fighting. And as a professional, you can't necessarily do that, at least at the level that you would as a student. As a student, you have no chill. As a student, and again, I'm talking about as a student activist, right?
Yeah.
As a student activist, you have no chill. You went out there and you protested and you did it and stuff, but as a professional, there's different ramifications to it. That transitional piece is definitely something that takes some time, and I think it's a internal as well. It's like internally you really have to understand, and it's hard, and sometimes that you have to kind of play the part in order to be able to make substantial impact for your students. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it was really kind of wrapping my head around, what, I might not be able to be like in the front line as I used to when I was a student. But that doesn't mean that I still cannot make impact for my students. The impact is just going to have to look different because now there's different rules that I have to follow as a staff member. if
Yeah.
that makes sense. And that took a while to process, but definitely I came in like, what the heck, and just angry and frustrated. And again, you're young,
Yep.
so you want to take over the world, and you have so many ideas, and you're frustrated, and you've literally lived it. You like just lived it. You literally have lived the injustices as a student, so you're frustrated and you want to do something about it.
Yeah, I think that's still, because we're still relatively young, that's still something that bothers the shit out of me. Like, because like, when I started working back at the community college, some of the people who I did the activism work and was in organizations with were still students there, and they were still doing the organization work. And now that I was a staff member, they were like, oh, now we can make change. Jakeel's there. He's going to be able to push all of our opinions and ideas. And I was like, yeah, I can. And then the first meeting I tried, it got shut down real quick. And I was like, holy shit, I'm not going to be able to do what I thought I was going to be able to do without losing my job. And trying to explain it to them like, hey, I won't be able to do it in that way. And they're just all like, oh, you're a sellout. And I'm like, it's hard to tell you what I can and cannot do because you're not in these spaces with me. And if you're asking me to sacrifice my paycheck that, that I need because, I'm from a low income background, like you're asking me to sacrifice my paycheck just for you to vocalize your opinions, I can't do that because you have more of a power with your voice than I do. So I recommend you actually showing up to this meeting and saying these things.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And I based on what you said, I think that it's hard because I feel like as a student, you have it flopped.
yeah.
As a student, you look up to your managers and your deans, and you look up to these people because to you they're all powerful and everything, so you put a lot of expectation on them. But and I feel like for me, when I thought that when I became a staff member, I was like, when I was a student activist, a student and undergrad, I kid you not, like I feel like I just, and a part of it is why I entered the field so fast, because I was like, I cannot wait to be a staff member and have all the power and do everything. Like I was just so tired of being a student because I was like, I can't do anything. Like I want to be a staff member and stuff. And then to finally get the position, and then you're like, wait a minute, I had all the power back then. I
Yep.
was like frustrated, and I was like, why did I rush to be here? Like,
Yep.
so it's really kind of empowering and reminding and teaching students, like, it's, you don't, if anything, you get your power taken away as a staff member, because as a student, that's where the real activism and change happens. And I think that that's what our role is to empower our students to use their voice. And we're here to support and give them the support that we can with the context that we can. And that's definitely multiple conversations that you have to have with students. But like you said, for me, I think I definitely rushed into wanting to have a full-time position because I just wanted to have all the power, and it was quite honestly the complete
Yeah,
opposite.
that's exactly how it was for me too. I was all like, you know what? Since they're not listening to me as a student, I'm gonna do it as a staff member. And then when I got to be a staff member, I was like, shit, I could probably do more as a student.
Yeah, I
Um,
couldn't have rushed into this.
yeah, it was a big, and I think too, like, just another issue that prevents us from making the change that we want to make as young professionals is like, because we're young, they place so many burdens and so many expectations and so many like things on our plates that we were taught, whether that's through grad school, whether that's through whatever means that we were taught like, oh, if your boss asks you to do a project on your own free time, you need to do it to impress them so you can get a pay grade or so you can get a promotion and stuff like that. And so you get all these expectations and you're like, I'm working 40 hours a week. I got 2 projects and I'm still trying to find time to advocate for these students. And it becomes this like burden where you're like, I'm burning out trying to like satisfy everybody. And I'm just really got to figure out me. And I think like for the young professionals entering, especially young professionals of color, like when you already have the expectation that like, you know, you as a young person, you're supposed to have the new enthusiasm for making change in the community, for making change on your campus. You're supposed to have the willingness to take on any project because you're fresh with theory in your head, you're fresh with experience and eagerness, right? And then you add on being a person of color, like that is just barriers in itself, because on my campus at least, and I can't speak for your campus, but on my campus, I was probably one of like 11 black staff members, particularly black men. And so, and if you talk about at the higher level, there's probably like 4 or 5 faculty staff who are black, and then like 2 or 3 who were on the student affairs side, and the other 2 were women, and they were in dean positions. And so it's like I'm literally the only one on this side trying to figure out what to do to navigate this stuff. Like nobody told me that people would be scared of me as a staff member. Nobody told me that I would still deal with racism from coworkers or from supervisors or from deans. Nobody told me that, like, sitting on a committee, that I would hear how bad they talk about some of our students. Nobody told me any of these things. Like, I had to literally, as a young person, you have to, the biggest thing is like watching your face. Like facial expressions are everything, and body language. Because I would sit in a meeting and I would hear like other staff members who are in the same department as me like undermine our students, like saying things like, "Oh, do you really think they're smart enough to do this? Do you really think that they can navigate this?" And I'd be sitting there like looking around like, "What the hell?" And that's where the whole like voice comes in, like, "Are you going to speak up?" Like, because there's times where I didn't speak up, right? And then the times that I did start to speak up, because I was like, I just can't handle them talking about black and brown students like this for so long. And I spoke up and was all like, "Why do y'all think our students aren't smart enough?" And then they would try to pull statistics. "Well, look at their grades. Look at these black men. They're dropping out. Look at these brown men. They're dropping out at these rates." And we're like, that's our fault as an institution. Like, we aren't supporting them. We're not promoting retention. We're not helping them with persistence. We kind of ride them off after they fail 1 or 2 classes. Like, that is our fault as an institution. And I say our because I work here now. Like, because if I was a student, I'd be like the institution. But now it's our institution because I work here. I get paid through you all. And I'm at fault too, even if I'm not directly the one causing the issues, because I can point to several departments or who are the issues, you know. And so that's the thing is, for me, like, I can take responsibility as a staff member or as a faculty member on campus and be like, we as an institution aren't doing what we need to do, even if I know it's not my department, even if I know it's administration or admin, admissions and records, or financial aid, or student equity. Like, even if I know it's those departments and it's not my particular department, I'm like, we are an institution as a whole. When we fail on one side, we're all failing. Like, and so that was like one of the biggest things as a young professional that I experienced, and was just like, that is something that is wild, that nobody, like, I don't know why I was so naive that I thought that racism was just going to die down because I'm a staff member, but like I feel like it almost like increased, and like, or like it was just more obvious in my face, because when you're a college student, and especially when you're at community college, you have those thoughts like, I wonder if my professor's racist. Like, you just think about those things, and then to actually find out that, oh yeah, they do not care about people of color at all. Like, their tenure, like, and that's when I really learned, like, tenure has a lot of power. Like, you can literally be like, I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna walk out and you're not gonna do anything about it. And you're just like, damn. And so I know another thing for both of us is we both have been or are currently faculty members. And being faculty at our age is almost like we get a lot of different things from, and for me personally, from them thinking that I'm just automatically going to be inappropriate with my students, them thinking that I won't know how to control a classroom when people argue with me, to like them thinking that I don't have the experience to teach in the classroom even though they hired me. So for you, like, being a young faculty member, Like, what do you feel like is one thing that you experience that you wouldn't experience if you were older?
I think that for me, obviously, you mentioned I'm definitely a younger faculty. I do think that I will say that I do feel like, if anything, my experience has been relatively pretty positive as a faculty member. And I do want to say that I think that taking on the role as faculty, I feel like, has been so validating for me as a young professional.
Mm,
I feel like if I can kind of pinpoint currently a point in my life that has really allowed me to own my worth as a young professional, has actually been stepping into the role as faculty
mm,
personally. And I do think that for me, I was terrified, I'm going to be honest, was terrified to walk into that classroom, because I knew, and I think this is the challenge, right? Is that I knew that some of my students were probably going to be older than me.
mm,
And that's kind of the reality, especially when you teach at a community college, is that when you're young, the students are typically either your age or older than you. So that was definitely one that I was like, what if these students don't take me seriously? Because obviously, like, I look young, and I could wear the outfit and everything, but I'm still young. So I was like, what if students aren't, like, obsessive, or they question what I'm going to say and stuff like that. So I do feel like, if I was older, there wouldn't be that fear, that doubt of that's worst. I think that typically students have a lot of respect for faculty, because it's like, oh my God, my professor, and I do think that that was something that I experienced, was that I felt like the students weren't going to just take me seriously, which is a doubt that I don't think I would have experienced if I was much older,
mm,
and I do think that luckily I've had lots of support, and I don't think that I've received any backlash from anybody and stuff. I think it was more of like an internal thing with students. And I had, one or two comments from students, but nothing that I feel like was too bad. But I got the comment of like, so not necessarily asking me my age, but asking me my age,
mm.
like, well, how long did it take you to finish your education? How long ago did you graduate? So I did get those comments. And at first I was like, oh man, so I do feel like it was more of an internal thing. And I think that I wouldn't have experienced so much of that internal fear had I been older.
Mm.
But I do feel like the fact that I was able to walk into that classroom and just receive such receptive feedback from the students, and the students just really gauging into the material and getting just positive feedback from the students, was so validating for me, because it reminded me, like, I can do this. I can be a young faculty. I have a lot to give in the classroom. Obviously, I do a lot of work outside of the classroom, but there's a lot that I can give inside the classroom as well. So I do feel like a lot of it was very internal, was very like fear that the students were not going to be receptive. Again, going back to that, I have to prove myself. And I really felt like students were just not going to like tone me out the minute they saw how young I was.
Mm.
But I do feel like it was validating, because for once I was able to see that it was me all along. It had nothing to do with my age. It was what I had to say was, powerful, to where the students were receptive and took the material. But, I did get one or two comments from students. But I do feel like I'm very lucky, and I don't, maybe the institution that I work at, right? But I do feel like I've gotten a lot of support from the faculty side, and I feel very blessed to be there as well, and to have the opportunity to be a young professional, be, a young faculty member. And I think that it is very rare for young people to become faculty, because there's that, especially faculty. I think that just the title has so much power that a lot of people are like, can't be a young faculty member, and I think that I do get the like, well, you're an intern, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm faculty now. I was an intern. I'm faculty now. So
Yeah,
you do definitely get that, those little comments and stuff.
yeah, yeah. I think for me, I think a drastically different experience. For me, the moment I stepped into teaching college, it was a, just a whole bunch of students questioning my capabilities, a whole bunch of students doubting like the information and it was just rough. I think it was very rough when I first started as a young professional. Um, and I mean, I'm slightly older, and I think I have just a tad bit more experience in higher ed because I am older. And so like I'm still a young professional, but I am moving closer to being a middle-aged professional. But I think that like I had a lot of students early on like questioning like, oh, like are you actually able to teach this class and stuff? But that transition more because I mean you've been around my like style of presenting and stuff like that, and there's like okay, so eventually it got to the point where they were like, oh no, like he knows what he's doing, like he knows what he's doing. It got to the point where like other faculty members in my department, um, especially my department chair, being like we have reports that students don't like the way you talk in the class and the cussing and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh well, none of these students are approaching me about it, and then I would have like my department chair saying, well, maybe you're not that approachable, things like that, and I'd be like, whoa, like I'm pretty sure I thought I was approachable, but and so that was like early on, but then like transitioning into like teaching like high school or like even with like our students and teaching the class that we created with the rhyme and reason is like you know that space is way more validating because the students actually like tell me how they feel like and like they talk about what they are learning and they say it like in the moment and I'm like cool, like you are learning from me, we are hitting our goals, we're hitting our outcomes, like you are applying this to your lives and stuff, so that space is way more validating. And so I think at the college the while I feel like there's definitely parts where it is validating being a faculty member, but I think that just comes with the power of being a faculty member. Um, but I've had like some pretty terrible like faculty, and it may just been the department I was in. I, so like being in the English department is very different than being in the psychology department. I can tell you that. Um, but ultimately I think that being a faculty member comes with its perks, and it came with a lot of good perks, but it also came with its downsides for me personally. And then I think while we identify differently in terms of gender, um, as a man I dealt with a lot of people thinking that I was just going to be inappropriate with my students, and like it was almost like an expectation that they're like, oh, like please don't hit on your students, and I'm like, you think that that's what I'm going to do? And like I can't speak on your experience, but I'm sure that like you probably didn't get that conversation. um, but the likelihood of you being hit on as a woman professor at your age too, and me as a male, it's just drastically different. And I mean, you do have a big rock on your finger, and so I think that that does change people's perspective of approaching you on that aspect. But yeah, I think that's one thing. But that can be a whole other like episode in itself, just like interacting with students as a young professional, like because we're so close into their age, like things can be seen a lot of different ways. And I know that that's one thing that I'm glad I have an experience working with you and stuff like that, and working with our program, that I've never had to deal with like, oh, is Jakeel going to be inappropriate with the students or not, but I think like you said earlier, like being a young professional does have a lot of advantages. Like we connect to our students way differently, right? And a lot of it too, I think that really helps with the work we do now, is like when our students say popular references to things, I actually understand them. And so it makes it easier to connect with them. And like, I think right now our students are saying like no cap and cap quite a bit. And I'm like, I'm so glad I understand this, because if I didn't understand it, I would be absolutely lost with our students.
Yeah.
Um, but I have one more question for you. Um, my last question for you is, for an incoming professional, Like, let's say straight up just graduated from grad school, fresh with student development theory and all eager to apply this stuff to their lives and to their students' lives, coming into the field of student affairs as a student of color, professional of color, right? A young professional of color, what piece of advice would you give them for starting their career in higher education?
Definitely. There's a lot. There's a lot that I can give. A lot of pieces of advice, again, just kind of where I'm at. And I think one that I would start off with is, treasure your energy. I think be very, very mindful of your energy. And I say that because when we're young, we give so much. And I think that that's where it gets hard to see just young professionals burn out so fast, so fast. And it's because of the topics that we discussed, right? There's so much pressure, there's so much expectation, you're constantly having to prove yourself. You are working late, you're working extra. Not that those things are bad, right? You do have it's kind of the reality in any job, in any field. When you're getting started off, you got to give 120% to everything you do, right? And it's part of it. But you also need to know and understand your limits, and you got to treasure that energy, because if you're burnt out, you're not going to be able to give that energy to your students. You really got to preserve that energy. So yeah, there is, there is times where I work late and I stayed over, and I do that because I have to. But I also had to learn to step back and to really preserve my energy. And that's hard. It's real freaking hard. But you really got to preserve your energy. You got to learn to pick your battles. Learn to pick your battles. You can't fight them all. You're going to get burned out. Literally, you're going to burn out and you're going to get burnt at your institution. You have to learn to fight your battles. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. You got to learn to really ground yourself on which ones are worth fighting. And when you're going to fight for them, make sure that you're using your energy well and you're going in strong. You're not just going in opinionated or because you think, you feel. Your students, that's your strength. Using the students, understanding their needs, that's your power. So you really got to understand and pick your battles. In the beginning, I was like, boom, 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 boom. You're going to burn out. And like I said, you're literally going to be burnt. So you really got to learn to pick your battles. And there's going to be some where you're going to have to let go. Again, preserve that energy. Let go. There's going to be some where you're going to put your energy full force, and you will, so preserve that energy, take care of yourself. And again, that's something that I'm still learning to navigate and reminding myself, like, my energy is so precious because I'm just getting started, and I should not feel so tired because I'm not going to last very long in this field if that's how I feel. And unfortunately, I think, I'm sure you would agree, we see that a lot. We see a lot of young professionals. There's a lot of people that I mentor that, call me and after a staff meeting or whatever, and they're just like, I want to quit, screw higher ed. I'm going to go and do my own thing outside, and I'm never going to work for this institution again. And we see a lot of that. We see a lot of young professionals just burning out. And I think it's really have to learn to preserve that energy. And there's going to be times where you are going to have to give it your all. And there's going to be times where, you're not. And again, what I said earlier, really, you got to trust your gut. You got to trust your intuition. And you chose this field for a reason. There's a reason why you chose this field. And you got to remind yourself, again, like I said earlier, your age is the strength that allows you to connect with your students. And oftentimes I feel like for a long time, I questioned, like, why are people doubting me? Why are people putting me down? And I always put it back to me. I was like, me. Like, I'm the problem, and I'm not good enough, and I'm not this. And that's not healthy at all. And you got to really remind yourself that, like, people are intimidated by us sometimes. They're intimidated by this youth. You guys are coming in strong. Your theory is fresh. You have innovative ideas, and you've been there, you know the struggles, and sometimes when we're in the field for a period of time we forget. So they're intimidated by what you got to bring to the table. So you really got to know your worth, know what you bring to the table, but also be respectful of other people's ideas. Don't come in and try to change everything. That's not going to go well. Understand the culture, understand what's going on, ground yourself, and most importantly, learn your students, understand your students, because that's what you're there for. You're there for the students, and use the fact that you were just there and you know what it's like to help you push through and continue to advocate for your students, but know your limits and really, again, treasure that energy that you have. And that is, again, super, super critical. And like I said, there's times where I really, really was quiet and didn't speak up because I felt like people just didn't want to hear what I said, because who do I know? I'm young, I'm just lucky I have a job, but again, you got to remember that you have a lot of innovative ideas, and you got to really believe in your voice and your power, and connect with the students. And sometimes you do have to play the part. Sometimes, like Jakeel said, you got to put on the suit and the shoes and stuff like that, but don't be afraid to loosen up with your students. I feel like the trust that I have with my students is because I allow myself to be who I am with them. And that's powerful. And I think sometimes in the field, you think it's the opposite, that you have to always carry yourself so professional with students. And that is a barrier. You're setting a literal wall with your students. Your students are not going to feel as comfortable talking to you when they see you all dressed up. But when they see you in when our students see us in our jeans, when we're running around in field trips and stuff, it adds, you take away those barriers with your students. So again, going off of, age is not a weakness, it's a strength. You can connect with your students, and there's a time and place for everything. And trust, you know that there's obviously, if you're in a staff meeting, you're going to dress up because you have to. But when you're with your students, you don't have to sell out. You can be you with your students. Let that personality shine. I think as professionals, you think you have to act a certain way and talk a certain way. And it's like, I feel like for me, speaking on our experience, we've been able to get the trust and the love from the students because we're not afraid to be ourselves in front of them. And as young professionals, we've learned, obviously, there's times and place where you have to play the part, but when you're with your students, you let that personality shine. And that is what gives you the power and strength with the students. And I think sometimes as young professionals, you're so afraid to do that. In fact, you're told not to do that. And you got to be you got to be yourself, and you got to remember why you chose this field, and you have a lot to offer.
Oh, there's a lot in there that she just said. And one, y'all see what she's saying, and there's a reason why she's in the field that she's in, and the reason why she's impacting students in the way that she's impacting students is, and you see the approach. And if you didn't listen to those gems, rewind and listen again, and just pay attention to what she was saying, right? And I echo every last bit of what she was saying. And for me, I would just say this one piece is like, and Steph did mention it, is be yourself. Like that, if there's one piece of advice, that is the one piece that I would say. Like, the reason why I've gotten as far as I've gotten in the field of higher education, not saying that I am like so elevated in this field, but I have made a mark in this field in my respective institutions for a reason. I have not stopped being myself in all of the spaces that I've been in. Like, there is something that could be said about me in every space, and it is Jakeel will always be Jakeel in all these spaces. Like, he's not going to filter his language, but he's going to know when to say things appropriately. He's always going to have the passion for his students. He's always going to have the best interest in his students. He's always going to be himself. He's always going to try to make students laugh and connect to students. Like, that is me being authentic 100% of the time. I'm not going to fake the funk so my students like me. If I'm myself and my students don't like me, fuck it, they don't like me. Like, but if I'm myself, they can at least respect that. And that's all I want my students respect at the end of the day. Yep. I don't need them to like me in order to serve them, in order to do my job. It helps, but I don't need them to like me in order to provide them with the resources for them to be academically or personally successful. And that's the most important thing that I would advocate for these young incoming professionals of color, because when you are the embodiment of your culture, your identity, as well as someone who is advocating for students in your field, like people are fucking intimidated. Like people see us as professionals of color, young professionals of color, and they're like, how are they embodying their culture and owning their culture and supporting their populations while still supporting all the students that come their way? Like people are so intimidated that we're making the impacts that we're making on students who look like us and students who don't look like us, right? And that's a big thing. Like a majority of my experiences in higher ed have been in programs where the students did not look like me, right? But I always make it a extreme effort into supporting students that look like me. Like, and that's important for you, is like, what are you, like, what is your goal in this field? Who are you trying to impact? How can you be authentic without sacrificing like your work? Like, I will never choose like selling out in order to get recognition. Like if it's not like me authentically, then I don't need the recognition. If you're not going to recognize me for who I am, how I am, and what I'm doing, then I don't need it. I don't need to pretend to be your idea of professionalism, because quite frankly I don't believe in it. Like I've gotten where I've gotten, I have been able to connect to students the way that I've been able to connect to students because they see me as myself, as someone who made fucking mistakes in high school, someone who made mistakes in community college, shit, someone who made mistakes in grad school. Like they see me as those people. They see me as a person who also learned from those mistakes, a person who's always going to be vocal. And I've always been vocal. I've been vocal in high school, community college, undergrad, and for damn sure I've been vocal in grad school. And so like these spaces that I'm in, I'm going to be myself, because being me is what's going to get me where I need to go. And at the end of the day, I can be satisfied with my behavior because I was being me. So that's the one piece of advice that I would give as like for you young professionals of color. And then the second piece of advice is like own your identities. Like if you are a Black, gay, bi, whatever, like male, female, non-binary, whatever, own those identities in your spaces, because those are the identities you're gonna go home with. And so own them in the spaces that you're in. Don't make them make you feel like the elephant in the room because you don't look like them, because you don't sound like them, because you don't like behave like them. Don't make them make you feel like the elephant in the room. Like own those identities and then own the work that you're able to do as well. Like they can't say shit about you if you're putting in that work and if you are confident about who you are. All they can do is intimidate, hate, and envy. And those things you have no control over. So let them do those things and continue doing the work that you do. Now, once it starts stifling you in this world or in this field, that's when you can bring it up to the appropriate people. But also know who the fuck you're talking to. Like, there is a reason why I'm still working with Steph. Like, because I was not supposed to be working this long with Steph. Like, it was not according to plan. Plan was summer. I'm out. It's been almost 2 years. So, like, know the people who's going to support you in your job, like people who are going to validate you in your job, and people who are just going to make sure that you're all right. There's been many of conversations that I've had with Steph about like the work that she does, because there's days where I know that people are trying to shit on her. And I'm just like, no, like you do the work that you do and you do fucking fantastic. Like, and the students come to you for a reason, right? And then there's times where she validates me in the spaces that I'm in. And then it's just not even just like the professional space, it's just who you are as an individual. Like there's shit, and there's clearly shit going on in the world. Like I've never had to go to work and be like, hey Steph, Black people are dying, and like I just need you to know that like I may not be in the right mindset. No, Steph brings it to me like there's shit going on in the world. We need to have a conversation about this. Let's bring it to our students. Do you feel comfortable enough talking about it, because this is your pain and your like those are conversations that you have with people who genuinely want the best for you in your field and in your life. And those are the people you gotta stay and keep in your life when you're in this field, because there's some people in your field who are like that. You will find them. you got to find them, but you will find them eventually, right? I was fortunate enough to have one in my grant program. So like you might have to do a little bit of searching, a little bit of digging, but like once you find them, you got to keep them in your circle because they're ultimately going to help you professionally, personally, and just like be in your life in that way. Like Steph is someone who will be in my professional life, right, regardless of if we're working together or not, and in my personal life, and like is someone who's just going to be someone who's close to me. And you know, I even say it in the spaces that we're in together that Steph is a sister and stuff like that, and the students get all weird, and that's just how they are. But like that's just the spaces that we're in, and so those are my pieces of advice. Um, Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Tell Me About It with Jakeel. I'll leave you all with Steph talking about anything that she wants to talk about, whether that's Instagram or things that she has in the future, things of that nature. So Steph, take it away.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, thank you for allowing me to have this space. And when you told me, what this podcast was about and stuff, I'm all for it. Because we've been there, we're still there. For the most part, and like. I know I didn't mention it, but I legit, started working as a student worker at 18, So when we mean young, we mean young, young, I got my first full time at like 21. So, I mean, we're talking about young, young, and we've been there. We've had our set of mistakes. So I definitely love the fact that we can just talk about it, go back and reflect and give advice, because I feel like a lot of people, especially of color, get so discouraged. And I've talked to a lot of people that are so discouraged to like go the faculty route, especially like because I'm on the instructional side. So like instructional faculty side, people are so intimidated, especially people of color. So, I love the fact that we can reflect and also, like you mentioned, get some recognition, because oftentimes we don't get that recognition for the work that we do. And our work is overseen for sure, especially as a new professional, because you're seen as lower in the ranks. So definitely keep pushing, find your people. I just really want to reiterate what Jakeel said, because he nailed it. Find your people, because at the end of the day, you are going to go through a lot. And I feel like, our job is not here to say that everything's going to be okay, because you're going to face those challenges. It does get better, and you do deserve to still push through. But there is going to be days where you're going to be in a staff meeting, you're going to get out, and you're going to be like, did that really freaking happen? Did they really just say that? You're going to have people that are going to look you down, whether it's your identities or your age. And you need to have those key players, those people in your life that you can vent to, that that are going to be there to listen and not, go out and snitch or whatever, but are genuinely going to listen. And I think that validation is very important to really bring you right back up and process the thing that happened. So find your people, true people that you can trust, whether it's in the field, outside of the field, in a grad program, whatever it may be. But I think there's this culture that like everybody's competition, because, and it's a small world and stuff, but find your people. I think having those people is so critical, and you need it. You need to have those venting sessions. You need to have those coping sessions, because it can be rough. It definitely can be rough sometimes, but we need to have more young people in the field. We need to continue to bring these ideas to our students. I really feel like you also mentioned, Jakeel, like own your identities. And I love that, because it's so amazing to, I feel like I've had times where students tell me like, you actually get it, like as a faculty member, like you're young and you get it. Like, that it's hard to buy textbooks, you're over here helping us get it for free. That it's a freaking pandemic. You understand it, and it's so like I have students coming into my office sometimes, and I know that they walk in and they see me, they see who I am, they either see my age or how I'm dressed, the color of my skin, and it's this like feeling. And it feels so good. I get that a lot where students come in. You just see it like in their shoulders and their body language. It's just like, and they just say it, and we need more faculty of color, more staff of color. We need y'all. We definitely need y'all to continue to take these spaces and because our students need us. Our students need us, and it does help to have that representation. It definitely helps, and it's very powerful to see individuals. And I feel like that feeling that I'm describing is what keeps me going and reminds me that I need to keep pushing forward, because I need to be at these spaces and be at these tables and continue to advocate for students. So regardless of what people may tell you or try to discourage you, keep going, keep pushing, and be be genuine and you. And that's one thing that Jakeel knows, that for me, that's how I want to be known, is always being genuine, always being intentional. I'm always intentional with everything that I do, and being here for the students. I don't forget where I come from and why I'm doing this. And I'm not doing this to move up the ranks. I'm doing this because someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Someone took the time to invest in me, and it's because of that person that I'm here today. And now it's my job to continue to pull my people up and uplift my people and have more of my community go to college and give back. So it's very powerful that we keep doing that. Own your identities, and it's not a deficit. It's so powerful. So thank you again just for giving me the space to share a little bit. It was definitely fun, and just being able to just give some advice. Been there, I'm still there. Like I said, I still consider myself a little young, a little older, but still pretty young, I would say. But I'm definitely just getting started. I want that to be known. I am just getting started. I do think that it's very important that, especially, I own being a Chicana, a woman of color. I'm a daughter of immigrants. I really want to make sure that I continue to impact and empower students and advocate healing. I think that for me, I've worked with a lot of communities of color, and there's so much pain. There's so much trauma that our students experience. And for me, I think a new mission that I've had that really is grounded in the students that I currently serve is advocating for healing, giving space in students. And particularly for me, again, this is me embracing my identities as women, right? Giving women the space to vent and process and heal. And I think that that's where I'm headed. That's where I'm going. Like I said, being faculty has been very validating, and it has allowed me to take it a step further in the classroom and provide support for students. And I hope to continue to do that and impact students in and outside the classroom. But I definitely working on some stuff. I want to continue to spread that message of healing, prioritizing your healing, putting yourself first, acknowledging, embracing, and eventually getting yourself in a place to heal. So that's where I'm at. I hope to just embark in this community and create more spaces outside of my job. I want to continue to make impact in my community, not just attached to my job, but also, just spread that message of healing in other platforms. So I hope to be able to do that soon, in different kind of forms and stuff, but we'll see where that goes. But that's where I'm at. Just want to continue to make change in our communities.
Yes. So first of all, it's not hopefully. Stephanie will. She will be making change, and will be doing these things. And I am just very fortunate to be around for the process and see the end result. And I know that things are coming, and and I can't wait to see those. And I'm definitely going to be here to support those. Um, and definitely thank you for coming on. I know that you were there the day I decided that this is the route that I was going, and you've always been there for everything that I've been doing, from nonprofit work to the merchandise to the things that we do in the program and stuff. So I really appreciate you. And I definitely hope people get a lot out of this episode, because I feel like there's a lot of things that was said. And yeah, thank you all for tuning in for Tell Me About It with Jakeel. Enjoy, and I'll see you all the next time.